The night was cold and silent. Rain tapped against the windows of a small house on the edge of the city. Ethan sat on his couch, trying to read, but something about the storm outside made him restless. He lived alone, and nights like this, always, felt too quiet. Suddenly, he heard a sound. It was soft but sharp like the creak of a floorboard. His head turned quickly, his heart beating faster. Someone was inside. Ethan froze for a moment, then slowly stood up. The sound came again. This time from the bathroom. He moved carefully, each step heavy with tension. The door was half open, and steam floated out as if hot water was running. His eyebrows pulled together in confusion. He had not turned on the shower when he pushed. The door opened, he stopped. There, standing inside the bathroom, was a girl. Her body was trembling, her clothes dirty, her skin marked with dust and scratches. Her hair was wet, her eyes wide and glowing faintly in the dim light. She was not human. The girl looked at him with fear, water dripping from her hands. Her voice shook as she whispered, "Please, don't throw me out. I just need to wash. I'm so dirty." Ethan's breath caught in his chest. He did not know whether to be afraid or angry. An alien here in his house. He had seen news of aliens arriving on Earth in small numbers. After the Great Wars, most humans avoided them. Some even hated them. But this one looked too weak, too desperate to be a threat. "What are you doing here?" Ethan asked in a low, firm voice. The girl stepped back, pressing against the tiled wall as if ready to be punished. "I had nowhere else to go," she said, her voice soft like broken glass. "The streets. They chase me. They see me as filth. I only wanted water, please." Her words struck something inside Ethan. He had lived a quiet life, keeping away from trouble. But the sight of her shivering, helpless, yet so full of fear, made him hesitate. For a moment, he saw not an alien intruder, but a lost soul. "You broke into my house," Ethan said, trying to sound strong, though his voice cracked. Her eyes filled with tears, and she shook her head. "I didn't mean harm. I promise. I will leave soon. I just—" She lowered her gaze. "I wanted to feel clean, even for one moment." Silence stretched between them. The storm outside roared louder, thunder shaking the glass windows. Ethan stood still, his fists tight, his mind racing. He should call someone. He should push her out, but something about her voice, so fragile, so human in its pain, stopped him. Finally, he sighed. "Finish quickly, then go," he said, his tone heavy with warning. Her lips parted in relief, and she bowed her head. "Thank you." "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan turned away, but his heart kept pounding as he walked back to the couch. Minutes passed, but the sound of running water did not calm him. Instead, his thoughts twisted. Who was she? Why was she running? And why did her eyes glow like stars in the dark? When she stepped out of the bathroom, his breath caught again. Her face was clean now. And though her clothes were still torn, she looked different. The dirt was gone, revealing delicate skin that seemed almost luminous. Her eyes, though tired, carried strange beauty, alien, yet soft. Ethan tried not to stare, but he could not look away. She held her arms tightly around herself, as if cold. Water still dripped from her hair onto the floor. "I will go now," she said softly. "I will not trouble you more." Her words were polite, but her voice trembled with loneliness. Something inside Ethan resisted. The storm outside was harsh, and she looked far too fragile to survive it. But he did not yet trust her. Instead of answering, he asked, "Who's chasing you?" Her body stiffened, her glowing eyes darted to the window as if shadows waited there. "They will come," she whispered. "They always come when I wash. They can smell it." Ethan frowned, confusion twisting in his chest. "Smell what?" he asked. She lowered her head, her wet hair falling across her face. "My kind. We release a scent. It is rare. It is dangerous. and it makes me hunted." Ethan stared at her. The storm's howl echoing the tension in the room. He didn't understand everything. But he understood one thing clearly. This was no ordinary visitor. Her arrival was the beginning of something larger. Something dangerous, and whether he liked it or not, he was now part of it. The girl looked at him again, her eyes shimmering with both fear and hope. "Please," she whispered once more. "Don't tell them I'm here." Ethan's jaw tightened, and he glanced at the door. He knew trouble was coming. But he also knew he could not throw her out into the storm. Not tonight. The storm outside did not stop. Wind pushed hard against the windows, and rain slid down like silver lines inside the house. Ethan stood in silence, staring at the alien girl who had just stepped out of his bathroom. Her wet hair clung to her face, and her eyes carried both exhaustion and fear. She looked fragile. Yet there was something strange about her, something he could not explain. Ethan had allowed her to wash. But now he felt uneasy. He wanted to send her away, to lock the door, and forget she had ever come. But then, a soft, sweet scent filled the room. It was faint at first, like the smell of flowers carried by the wind. Then it grew stronger, warm, comforting, almost hypnotic. Ethan blinked and stepped back, his chest tightening. The girl noticed his reaction and gasped. She quickly hugged herself as if trying to hold something inside. "No, not now," she whispered, her voice shaking. Her eyes glowed brighter for a moment, and she looked terrified. "What is this smell?" Ethan asked, his voice sharp but also unsteady. It's coming from you, isn't it?" She turned, her face away, shame on her features. "I told you. They will find me when I wash, when I am clean." The scent escapes, her voice broke. "I cannot control it." Ethan coughed lightly, trying to resist the heavy sweetness that seemed to wrap around his thoughts. It was not like any perfume, not like food or flowers. It was alive, pulling at his mind, making him calm even when his heart wanted to panic. "Why? What are you?" Ethan demanded, though his voice was weaker than he wanted. The girl looked at him, tears in her strange, glowing eyes. "I am hunted because of this," she said. "My kind produces this fragrance, rare and powerful. To humans, it feels pleasant, but to others it is more. It is a signal." Ethan frowned. "A signal? For who?" Before she could answer, a distant sound echoed outside, sharp, mechanical, unnatural, like a low hum mixed with metallic footsteps. Her body tensed instantly, fear rising in her face. "They are here," she whispered, her voice cracking. Ethan moved to the window and peeked out through the sheets of rain. He saw strange shadows moving in the street, tall figures in dark armor, their helmets glowing faintly red in the storm. They walked slowly, scanning the houses, their weapons strapped to their sides. His stomach twisted. This was no police patrol, no normal search. These were hunters, and they were looking for her. Ethan turned back to the girl, who was shaking badly, her arms wrapped around herself, tears sliding down her cheeks. "They can smell it," she whispered. "They always can. The moment I wash it escapes, the rain spreads it further." Her breathing quickened, her voice desperate. "They will knock on your door, they will ask. Please. Please don't tell them." Ethan clenched his jaw, his mind racing. This was madness. He had only wanted a quiet night. And now an alien fugitive was in his bathroom, while soldiers hunted outside. But when he looked at her trembling form, he felt something deeper than fear. She was not dangerous, not violent, she was just trying to survive. Suddenly, the heavy sound of footsteps came closer. A loud knock shook his door. Ethan's heart leaped in his chest. Another knock followed, harder this time, making the walls vibrate. He glanced at the girl, who covered her mouth with both hands to stop her breathing from being heard. Her glowing eyes begged him silently, her whole body shaking as though she might collapse. Ethan walked to the door, his palms sweating. He hesitated, then opened it just slightly. 3 armored beings stood there, tall and cold, their glowing visors fixed on him. The storm washed across their armor, making them look like shadows of steel. One of them spoke, the voice low and mechanical, human. "We are looking for a female fugitive, alien in form, small, with glowing eyes." The soldier's head tilted slightly, as if scanning Ethan's face for lies. "Have you seen anyone like that pass by?" Ethan's throat went dry. For a moment, he almost told the truth. But then he saw the girl's reflection in the glass beside him. She was crouched low, hidden but trembling, her eyes locked on him in pure fear. Ethan turned back to the soldiers, forcing his face calm. "No," he said firmly. "No one like that has come here." The soldiers stared at him for several long seconds. The silence was heavy, the storm screaming around them. Finally, the armored figure gave a short nod. "If you see her, report immediately." "Her kind is dangerous," the soldier said. Then the 3 figures turned, walking away into the storm. Ethan closed the door quickly, his body shaking with tension. When he turned, the girl was staring at him with wide eyes. You lied for me?" she whispered. Her voice was filled with both surprise and gratitude. Tears rolled down her face, and for the first time, her lips curved into the faintest smile. Ethan exhaled hard, sitting down on the couch with his hands on his head. "You just dragged me into something I don't understand," he muttered. But deep down, he knew he had made a choice. He had protected her, and now there was no turning back. The girl stepped closer, her voice soft. "You saved me. Now you are part of this." Ethan lifted his head, staring at her glowing eyes. He didn't know what danger awaited, but he knew one thing: life would never be quiet again. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed was even heavier. Ethan sat on the couch, his mind racing after what had just happened. 3 armored hunters had stood at his door, asking for the alien girl, and he had lied. He had looked them in the face and said no, even though she was hiding only a few steps away. Now the girl Lyra, as she finally whispered her name, sat quietly near the window. Her glowing eyes stared at the floor, her hands clenched together as if she feared they might shake. The soft fragrance around her had faded a little, but it still lingered in the air. Ethan noticed it made him calm, yet uneasy at the same time. He rubbed his temples and finally asked, "Why are they after you? Tell me the truth this time." Lyra looked at him with fear, then glanced back at the door as if the hunters could burst through at any second. "They hunt my kind because of what we carry inside us," she said softly. Her voice was fragile, almost breaking the fragrance. "It is not just smell, it is power. Some use it to heal, some to control minds, some to destroy." Her glowing eyes lifted, meeting his, "And I cannot control mine. That is why they want my life." Ethan leaned back, his chest tight. He didn't want to believe her words. But the strange calm that her presence gave him was proof enough. If others wanted that power, then she was more than just a runaway. She was a target. And by protecting her, he had just painted that target on himself too, before he could say anything more. There was another sound outside. Not a knock this time, but a heavy crash. The walls shook faintly, and Lyra gasped, pressing herself against the wall. "They're back," she whispered, her voice trembling. Her words were like a knife through the quiet room. Ethan quickly stood and moved to the window. He pulled the curtain back just enough to see. Down the street, dark armored figures were spreading out, scanning every door and corner with glowing devices. But this time, they weren't walking slowly. They were moving with purpose, closing in on his house. His stomach twisted. "They know," he muttered. "They must have sensed something." Lyra clutched his sleeve suddenly. her cold hands shaking. They can smell the last of it. The rain carried it further. They're tracing me, her glowing eyes locked on his. Wide with fear. If they find me here, they will kill you. 2. Ethan looked at her pale face, at the tears threatening to fall. For a moment, he wanted to push her out, to let her run so that he could be free of this danger. But deep down, something refused. She was too broken, too fragile, and he could not throw her into the jaws of hunters like prey. The loud crash came again, this time closer. A voice boomed from outside, deep and metallic, human inside. Open your door, immediately. Lyra's body went rigid, her hands covering her mouth. Ethan's heart pounded as he thought fast. He couldn't open the door this time, not again. They already suspected him. Suddenly, the back window shattered with a violent smash. Glass rained across the floor, and 2 hunters in dark armor climbed inside. Their glowing red visors scanned the room, weapons raised. Ethan instinctively grabbed a wooden chair and held it like a weapon. His hands shaking. "Stay behind me," he ordered Lyra. His voice unsteady but firm. The hunters aimed their glowing rifles directly at him. "Step aside, human." One of them said coldly, "We do not harm unless resistance is given. Surrender the female." Lyra's terrified whisper filled the room. "They will chain me. Take me back. I'll never be free again." Ethan's jaw clenched, his fear boiling into anger. He didn't know what was happening, didn't understand alien wars or powers, but he knew one thing. She was terrified. And he could not stand by and do nothing. "Get out of my house," Ethan growled, gripping the chair tighter. The hunters stepped forward, weapons humming with dangerous light. But before they could fire, something strange happened. Lyra cried out, falling to her knees. Her body shook violently. And from her skin, a wave of sweet fragrance burst out. It filled the air instantly, heavier and thicker than before. The hunters froze, their visors flickering with strange light. Their grips on the rifles loosened, and for a moment, their movements slowed as though trapped in a dream. Ethan coughed, covering his mouth. The scent wrapped around him too, but instead of weakness, he felt warmth, like his body was being shielded. He looked at Lyra in shock, her eyes glowing brighter than ever, tears streaming down her face. The hunter stumbled, one dropping his rifle to the floor. The other pressed a hand to his helmet, as if fighting something inside his mind. Lyra's voice shook as she cried out, "I can't hold it long. Run, please." Ethan didn't think. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the back door. Together, they stumbled into the night, running barefoot across wet ground. Behind them, the hunters roared in anger, their trance breaking. Shots of glowing light cut through the rain, smashing against walls and fences. Ethan pulled Lyra down an alley, his breath burning. Her small form trembled beside him, but she kept running, for the first time in years. He felt truly alive, scared. But alive, the quiet life he once knew was gone, replaced by danger, chaos, and something he could not yet name. When they finally stopped to breathe, Lyra leaned against the wall, weak and pale. Her eyes glowed faintly as she whispered, "You should have left me, human. But you didn't." Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. "Now they will never stop hunting us." Ethan looked at her, his chest heaving. He knew she was right, but as he stared at her broken yet determined face, one truth became clear. In his heart, he would not abandon her, no matter what came next. The alley was dark and wet. Rain dripped slowly from broken pipes and rooftops. Ethan leaned against a wall, his chest still rising and falling from the run beside him. Lyra's small body shook with exhaustion, her glowing eyes dimmer than before. The sweet fragrance that had saved them in the house was fading, leaving only the heavy smell of wet stone and fear. Ethan wiped water from his face and whispered harshly, "What was that?" What did you just do back there? Klua closed her eyes, her voice weak but steady. You saw it. The fragrance, it can cloud their minds. It can make them slow, confused. But it takes everything from me when I use it. Her hands trembled. As she hugged herself tighter, if I push it too far, I will collapse. Or worse, Ethan stared at her in disbelief. He thought back to the hunters armored, merciless yet. They had stumbled like children under her scent. It made no sense, yet it was real. You're telling me your people all have this? He asked, his voice low. Lyra shook her head, water dripping from her hair. No, only some. Only a few of us are born with this gift, but to my people, it is not a gift. It is a curse. Her glowing eyes met his, sadness swimming in them, because others want to use it. War leaders, traders, hunters, even humans on black markets. They see us as tools, not people. Ethan clenched his fists, anger rising in his chest. He had always thought humanity was cruel to aliens. But hearing her words made it clear, wasn't just humans. Her whole world had treated her kind like property. They captured me when I was young, Lyra whispered, her voice shaking. They locked us in cages, made us release the fragrance for their soldiers, to heal them, to strengthen them, sometimes even to drive enemies mad. Her lips trembled. When I escaped, I promised myself I would never let them chain me again. Ethan swallowed hard. He could hear the truth in her broken voice. The trembling in her hands wasn't just from cold, was memory. She had been living in fear for years, always running, always hunted, and now you're here. Ethan said quietly. Lyra nodded slowly, her face pale. Earth was supposed to be safer. Humans do not know much about us, but the hunters followed. They always follow. Her eyes glowed faintly. They can never allow one of us to be free. Because freedom means danger to their control. Silence filled the alley, broken only by the drip of water. Ethan rubbed his hands over his face, trying to think. He had just wanted a quiet life. But now he was standing in a dark alley with an alien fugitive who carried secrets bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Finally, he spoke. Then you can't stay here. Not in the open, not in my house. Lyra lowered her head, her voice almost a whisper. I know. I am a burden to you. I will keep running alone. Her steps moved weakly as she tried to walk away. Ethan's hand shot out, catching her wrist. Wait, he said sharply. She stopped, her glowing eyes wide. He sighed, shaking his head. You wouldn't last a day out there, not with them searching. You'll collapse before you reach the next street. Her lips parted, surprise flickering on her face. Why? She whispered. Why do you care? You don't even know me. Ethan hesitated, his chest heavy with words he couldn't explain. Finally, he said, because no one deserves to be hunted like an animal. His voice grew firmer. If I turn my back on you now, then I'm no better than them. Lyra's eyes shimmered with tears, her lips trembling into the smallest smile. For the first time, she didn't look like a stranger. She looked like someone who had been waiting her whole life to hear those words. Then I will tell you everything, she whispered. Her voice carried a weight that made Ethan's chest tighten. They found shelter in an abandoned storage shed at the edge of the street. Inside, it was dry but dusty, filled with broken crates and rusted tools. Lyra sat on the floor, pulling her knees to her chest, while Ethan lit a small lantern. She began to speak slowly, carefully, as if each word carried pain. My world was once bright, full of music, gardens, and rivers that glowed at night. Her eyes softened as if seeing it in her mind. But war came. And leaders discovered what our fragrance could do. They turned it into a weapon. And soon we were no longer free. Ethan listened in silence, his chest tight. Her words painted a picture of beauty destroyed by greed. It was not so different from Earth's own history. Lyra's voice cracked as she finished. Now, there are only two paths for me, to be captured again, or to die running. She looked at him, her glowing eyes filled with sorrow. But maybe with you. Maybe there is another path. Ethan's heart pounded at her words. He didn't know what kind of path she meant, but he knew one thing. He couldn't let her face it alone. He nodded slowly, his voice firm. Then we'll find it together, Lyra's lips curved into a weak but real smile for the first time since she entered his house. She looked less like a fugitive and more like a survivor. But outside, in the streets, the hunters' glowing visors still scanned the night. Their search was not over, and Ethan knew their time in hiding was running out. The old shed became their secret place. It was cold, dusty, and far from comfortable. But it gave them cover from the hunters. Ethan repaired the broken door with wooden planks, and Lyra spread an old blanket on the floor. For the first time since she had entered his house, there was a sense of stillness. But it was not peace. Outside, the hunters still searched, their red visors glowing through the night. Every sound of boots in the distance made Lyra flinch. Every shadow across the cracked walls made Ethan's chest tighten. Days passed, and they lived quietly inside. Ethan would leave in the mornings. Blending in with the people in the city, he brought back food and water, sometimes second-hand clothes to cover Lyra's torn dress. She stayed hidden, never daring to step outside during the day. At first, it was hard. Lyra spoke little, and Ethan struggled to understand her alien ways. But slowly, something began to change. One night, when the rain fell gently outside, she asked him, "Why do you not fear me? Others look at me with disgust, but you don't." Ethan looked at her glowing eyes across the dim lantern light. "I'd be lying if I said I wasn't afraid at first," he admitted. "But I've seen the fear in you, the pain, and I know you're not a monster." Her lips trembled as though she wanted to argue, but instead, a single tear slipped down her cheek. For the first time, she didn't hide it. And Ethan didn't look away. From then on, their silence felt different. Was not heavy, but warm. When he returned with food, she smiled softly instead of hiding her face. When she spoke of her home, Ethan listened without judgment. And at night, when nightmares shook her awake, Ethan stayed near, whispering calm words until she slept again. Still, danger never left. One afternoon, as Ethan returned with supplies, he noticed two hunters patrolling the street, scanning the ground with devices. He slipped past them carefully, his heart racing. When he entered the shed, Lyra looked at him with panic in her glowing eyes. "They're close again, aren't they?" she whispered. Ethan nodded, closer than before. "We'll need to move soon." Lyra lowered her head, her voice breaking. "I only bring you danger, human. You should have left me that first night." Her words shook Ethan more than the hunters outside. He crouched in front of her, lifting her chin gently so she would meet his eyes. "You don't get it," he said firmly. "I'm not protecting you out of pity. I'm protecting you because you matter." Her breath caught, her glowing eyes wide and wet. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not in all the years she had lived in chains and fear. She swallowed hard, whispering, "You treat me like I am a person." Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "Because you are." That night, as the storm raged again, Lyra finally opened up fully. She told him about her childhood, about the gardens of light on her world, about the days soldiers came and ripped it all away. Her voice broke many times, but Ethan listened patiently, never once turning away by the time she finished. Her head rested lightly against his shoulder. For a long time, neither spoke, the silence between them saying more than words. But safety was not meant to last. The hunters grew bolder, entering abandoned buildings, leaving no corner unchecked. One evening, as Ethan returned late, he noticed glowing red marks painted on wall, symbols of search and warning. They were tightening their net when he entered the shed. Lyra was sitting quietly, tracing patterns in the dust with her fingers. She looked up at him with a small smile, but he could see the sadness in her eyes. "They will find us soon," she said softly. Ethan placed the food down and sat beside her, his voice steady. "Then we'll move before they do." She stared at him, her lips parting. "Always. We. Never you and me," she whispered. The warmth in her voice made Ethan pause. In that moment, he realized what had grown between them was no longer just protection. It was trust, maybe even something stronger. He nodded, his tone firm. "Yes, always we." Lyra's glowing eyes softened, and for the first time, she leaned closer. Resting against him without fear, her fragrance filled the small shed, gentle and calming. Not forced or wild this time. It was not a signal of danger, was comfort, trust, and something Ethan couldn't explain but felt deep in his chest for a brief moment. As the hunters searched outside, the two of them shared a fragile peace, but Ethan knew it could not last. Soon they would be discovered, soon they would have to run again. Yet as he held her close in that quiet shed, one truth grew stronger in his heart. He would not let her face it alone. The hunters did not stop. Every night their glowing visors moved through the streets. Every day their strange machines hummed as they scanned for traces of Lyra's scent. Ethan and Lyra stayed hidden in the shed as long as they could, but it was only a matter of time before the net closed in. One morning, Ethan returned from gathering supplies, his face pale and tense. Lyra rushed to him, her glowing eyes wide. "What happened?" she asked quickly. "They've marked the buildings nearby," Ethan whispered, setting down the food. "They're going door to door, clearing every place. They'll reach us soon." Lyra's hands tightened around the blanket she had been holding, her voice trembled. "Then it's over. They'll catch me, and you too." Ethan shook his head sharply. "No, it's not over. Not yet." His eyes locked on hers with determination. "We moved tonight." When darkness fell, the city seemed colder. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the distant hum of the hunters' machines. Ethan and Lyra slipped out of the shed, moving carefully through shadows. Lyra's steps were light but shaky, her body still weak from days of hiding. Ethan stayed close, guiding her through alleys and broken streets. For a while, it seemed like they might make it. But then, from behind them, a beam of red light swept across the ground. A hunter's voice echoed through the night, cold and sharp. "Target detected," Lyra gasped, fear flashing in her glowing eyes. Ethan grabbed her hand and pulled her forward. "Run!" he shouted. They sprinted down the narrow alley, their feet splashing through puddles. The sound of armored boots thundered behind them, weapons charging with a low hum. Bolts of glowing energy cut through the air, smashing into walls and sending sparks flying. Ethan's chest burned as he ran, but he refused to slow down. Lyra struggled beside him, her breath short and ragged. Her fragrance began to leak into the air. Soft but unsteady, it calmed Ethan's pounding heart, but it also risked drawing more hunters to them. They ducked into a side street, climbing over a broken fence into the remains of an old factory. Inside, the vast space was dark, filled with rusted machines and broken glass. Ethan pulled Lyra behind one of the large metal frames, both of them gasping for breath. Lyra's hands shook as she pressed them against her chest. "They won't stop," she whispered, her voice full of despair. "No matter where I run, they always follow. Always." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. "Then we don't just run, we fight smart," he said firmly. His eyes scanned the factory, searching for anything they could use. The hunters' footsteps echoed inside, their glowing visors cutting through the dark. They moved in formation, scanning each corner methodically. Lyra's body froze, terror locking her in place. Ethan leaned close and whispered, Trust me. Stay quiet. Stay low. He found a pile of old pipes near the wall. With effort, he shoved one loose, sending it crashing loudly across the floor. The hunters turned instantly, their visors flashing red as they marched toward the sound. While they were distracted, Ethan pulled Lyra in the opposite direction, slipping between shadows, but luck only lasted so long. One of the hunters spotted them, shouting, "There!" A blast of light ripped through the floor near Ethan's feet, the shockwave knocking him off balance. He stumbled, but forced himself up, pulling Lyra with him. They dashed toward a stairwell, climbing quickly as shots exploded around them. On the upper level, they found themselves trapped, the walkway broken on both sides. Hunters moved below and above, closing in like a tightening cage. Lyra's body shook, her glowing eyes filled with tears. "It's the end," she whispered. Her voice was soft, broken. "I can't keep running. I'll only slow you down." Ethan turned sharply, grabbing her shoulders. "Don't you dare say that," he said firmly. "You're not slowing me down. We're in this together." Her eyes widened at his words, her breath catching. And then, something inside her shifted. Her glowing eyes flared brighter, her fragrance bursting into the air stronger than ever before. It wrapped around them like a wave. Thick and powerful, the hunters froze, their weapons lowering slightly. As their movements turned sluggish, Ethan coughed, his head spinning. But he stayed focused. "Lyra, control it just enough to hold them." Her body trembled violently, but she nodded, fighting to direct the scent for a brief moment. The hunters staggered, their red visors flickering with confusion. Ethan seized the chance, dragging Lyra across the broken walkway toward a hanging chain. He swung it down, creating a crash of noise that echoed across the factory. The hunters stumbled further, giving them a gap to escape. They fled through a broken window, tumbling onto the wet street outside. Both of them lay there for a moment, gasping in the cold night air. Lyra's body was weak, her glow dim. But she looked at Ethan with something new in her eyes. "Hope, you keep risking yourself," she whispered, her voice shaky. "Why? You could leave me. You could save yourself." Ethan's chest heaved, his eyes locked on hers. "Because you're not just some fugitive to me anymore," he said softly. "You're someone worth fighting for." Lyra's lips trembled, her glowing eyes shimmering with emotion for the first time. She reached out and held his hand tightly. Her fragrance filled the air, gentle this time, carrying warmth instead of fear. The chase wasn't over. The hunters would come again. Stronger, faster, more prepared. But as Ethan and Lyra disappeared into the night, one truth had become clear. They were no longer just running to survive. They were running together, bound by trust and something deeper that neither of them could deny. The city never slept, even in the darkest hours. Lights from towers glowed faintly through the mist, but for Ethan and Lyra, the night was filled with nothing but fear and heavy footsteps behind them. The hunters had not stopped, not after the factory. Not after all the close escapes. Ethan's body ached, his clothes torn, his lungs burning from running for days, but he never let go of Lyra's hand. Her small figure stumbled beside him, weak but determined, her glowing eyes shining even in the shadows. They reached the edge of the city, where broken roads led into wide fields. The air was colder here, cleaner, with no crowds to hide in. It was dangerous in its emptiness, nowhere to run, nowhere to blend. Ethan knew the hunters would corner them soon. Lyra sank to the ground, her breaths shallow. Her body shook as if her strength was breaking apart. "You should leave me," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "If they catch you with me, you'll die. Please, go while you can." Ethan knelt in front of her, his face hard with resolve. "I told you before. I'm not leaving you," he said firmly. "Not then, not now, not ever." Her glowing eyes filled with tears, shimmering against the faint moonlight. "You're a fool," she whispered softly, though her lips curved into a weak smile. A kind, stubborn fool, before Ethan could answer. The ground shook with heavy steps. Dark figures appeared across the field. Armored hunters closing in with glowing rifles. Behind them, their machines hovered, humming low like predators. Ready to strike, there was no way out. No more alleys to hide in, no doors to slam shut. Ethan rose to his feet. Standing between Lyra and the approaching hunters, he had nothing but his bare hands and a rusted metal rod he had picked up along the way. It wasn't enough, but he refused to move aside. The leader of the hunters stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. "Human, step away. This is not your fight." He raised his weapon, its glow lighting the ground in red. "Give us the female, and we will let you live." Ethan's chest tightened, but his voice came out strong. "No," he said. His hands gripped the rod tightly, his legs shaking, but he did not step back. "She's not your prisoner, not your tool, not anymore." The hunter tilted his head as if studying him. "Then you will die with her." The rifles lifted red. Lights burning through the mist, Lyra's body trembled as she tried to rise. Her fragrance began to leak into the air again, but this time it was weak, scattered. She didn't have the strength left to control it. Ethan glanced back at her, his eyes fierce. "You don't need to run anymore," he said. "Just trust me. Whatever happens, you're not alone." Something inside Lyra broke at his words. But it wasn't despair, it was release. Her glowing eyes closed, and when they opened again, they burned brighter than ever before. The air around her shimmered. As her fragrance exploded outward, not in fear this time, but in strength. It rolled across the field like a wave, heavy, alive, powerful. The hunters froze. Their weapons faltering, their visors flickering as if struck by lightning. They staggered, some dropping their rifles, others clutching their helmets as the sweet, burning scent filled their minds. Even the hovering machines stuttered and crashed. Into the ground, sparks flying. Ethan felt it to his chest filled with warmth, his mind calm even as danger raged around them. But unlike the hunters, it didn't crush him. Instead, it lifted him like invisible arms holding him steady. Lyra cried out as the power flowed through her. Her voice carried across the field. Sharp and full of defiance, "I am not your weapon. I am not your prisoner. I am free." The hunters fell back, some collapsing completely, others stumbling away into the mist. Their red lights vanished one by one until silence returned to the field. Lyra dropped to her knees. Her body weak from the effort, Ethan rushed to her side. Catching her before she could fall, her glowing eyes flickered as she whispered, "I thought I would die if I tried to control it. But with you here, I found strength." Ethan pulled her close, his arms firm around her trembling frame. "You were never weak," he said softly. "You just needed someone to believe it." Her lips trembled into a smile, her glowing eyes filling with tears that slid down her cheeks. "I had nowhere to go until you gave me warmth," she whispered, her voice fragile but full of meaning. Ethan held her tighter, his chest heavy with emotion. The night was quiet now, the storm finally gone. They were bruised, hunted, and still in danger. But in that moment, none of it mattered, because in each other, they had found something stronger than fear, stronger than chains, not just survival hope. And for the first time since the night she had stepped into his house, Lyra felt safe, safe in the arms of the human who refused to abandon her, safe in the warmth that would last forever.